So the thing is that do young people believe in the elections for them to lead in the advocacy? The government has so behaved badly that the young people who you are talking about are all defeated. They're defeated. The most important thing in election is the integrity of the votes. Is the votes not allowing manipulation in the election. And why you know that INEC was brought into our elections to bring some sort of transparency and credibility.
Yes.
But the INEC lost its strength after the 2023 elections when most people is prepare yourself to vote. If you feel good about the government, express it through a vote. If you feel bad about this government, express it through a vote. Because that's what democracy offers. And I hope that Nigeria gets better. I really pray. But I believe.
Preview.
Hello there and welcome to another episode of Youthacy. As you know, on this show, empower young people to be effective community organizers, democratic mobilizers, and productive change agents. My name is Njoku and I am excited to be your host. Today, I have a very interesting guest with me in the studio and we're going to be talking about a particularly interesting and important topic. We're going to be looking at building inclusive democracy. You know, how young people, how different genders, and how people with disability can participate more in our democratic actions as a nation and in Africa as well. Our guest speaker is none other than Mr. Emmanuel Njoku, who is the Director of Governance and Democracy at Connected Development. He has had a lot of years of experience, over 50 years of experience in this conversation that we are having today. And I am sure that you will learn a lot of things from all we have to say today. Mr. Emmanuel, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So tell us a little more about yourself and your work.
Well, you talked about election and I've been around the elections for as long as, maybe more than, if you add my youth service days and the work I did at working as both a presiding officer, working as the guys that give out PVCs and register voters, you know. Then my work in the civil society space where I've also been part of electoral reforms within INEC at the bigger space, at the constitutional level.
Yes.
Then observing elections within Nigeria, outside Nigeria, outside Africa, in US elections. So yeah, hoping we've been engaging a lot over the past decade or more, hoping and trying to see that elections get better so Nigerians can actually genuinely start enjoying the dividends of democracy, you know, the promises of democracy, which we've not exactly yet seen in Nigeria, sadly so.
I mean, we were just having this conversation, right, before the camera started rolling. You've been in this space for over 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you're saying we haven't seen this. So is it possible to say there's been progress or are we going back?
You've answered it. So there is progress. Clearly, there's progress. But just that for every progress we make, it looks like for every step we take 2-3 steps and then you take another 2 steps backward. So you see, more like you are moving in circles, even though there is progress. And one key progress is, you know, the introduction of technology in our elections, and not all round. But when I speak about the progress, I speak in regards to the introduction of the beavers. You know, that's one key progress we've made, because in the past elections, so when you hear about elections in 2019, 2015, and you hear the voter turnout, those numbers are not real, because there used to be a lot of voter accreditation fraud, you know. But with the introduction of beavers, what we had in the last election is what the figure that is nearest to accuracy because of the introduction of beavers. So beavers was able to check that accreditation fraud that we see in elections in the past. But sadly, that's why I say we beg. So what we get with the beavers was supposed to be complemented with the IREF. But of course, we all know what happened with IREF. So that's why I say when we take 3 steps, you know, forward, we take 2 steps backward. So we're still in the same place. We are not exactly making progress. Given how many years this our democracy is, we're not making any kind of progress, given the efforts that has been put in, the resources that has been put in, the engagement of civil societies, all the conversation that has happened, the reforms, you know. So, but I think one of our biggest challenges in every effort to make is still the political parties and politicians. So that's the biggest That's the most disappointing part of our process. The stakeholders as regards politicians. For every time stakeholders, INEC, civil societies come together and take a step forward, the politicians are always there waiting to, set us back because they just don't conform to the rules, because this is a part of the country where winning an election is something that you must do by all means possible. So for every time there are reforms and there is progress, you see them just thwarting the whole process and setting us behind again.
That is very interesting and
very sad.
It's quite sad. It's quite sad reality, because we have been in this democracy for 25 years now, and we're still saying the same thing, giving the same recommendations, asking the same questions, asking for the same things that should come to us freely by virtue of the system that we found ourselves in. But let's move into the conversation of the day, which is inclusive democracy. Looking at your experience from over 15 years of experience in, election-related matters, related matters rather. When we talk about inclusion in governance and inclusion in democracy, where are we? Where are we coming from? That is looking at it from the point of view of young people being included in decision-making process and democratic participation as well, women as well, and then people with disability.
Well, if you come from the point of young people and coming from the data of the 2023 general election, I'm aware that 50.5% of the registered voters in that database are people that are below 35 years old. That's young people, youths, based on our youth policy in Nigeria. Young people are over 50% of the voter register. So when you look at it in that regard, we cannot say that there is no inclusion in the data of registered voters. And INEC and civil societies, a lot has also been done in the past years from 2019. I know there was a lot of engagement that, in fact, we put up a document, an engagement document, which we called Youth Engagement Strategy, with which young people were engaged across the country to get them to participate. There was also a document called People with Disability Election Framework, which guides how people with disabilities are also participating in the election. And clearly give it to INEC. INEC has also moved a step forward to ensure that people with disabilities also participate in the election, which is why they provide braille ballot papers.
Yes.
They also provide magnified lens. So they have a data. Their data set captures where there are people with disabilities in their voter register. That's a lot to ensure inclusion.
Yes.
But as much as there is a lot of young people who have registered, the question is how many of them actually engage in the process, the election day itself. A lot of young people probably just register to get the ID card, use it for other purposes, but you won't really blame them. The process we deploy to get registered to vote, and the process you have to go through to get your PVC is so cumbersome, it's so stressful. And then a lot of young people are very mobile, upwardly mobile. So you may be here. I don't think if you're married, but in the next 2 years, if you're married, you probably will relocate to. If your husband is in Lagos, you're in Lagos. The young people who are serving in Abuja, doing NYS in Abuja this year, at the end of their service year, less than 10% of them remain in FCT. Yeah. The rest go back to register. So the point I'm making is the whole stress of going to register. How stressful it is for young people who just want these things to be made available through technology for them. But you have to go a lot of times beyond the queue under the sun. Then when you register, it's not done. You have to now come back and go through that stress for you to get your PVC. Then when you now relocate, which is what I talk about young people who are mobile, you may be working here. In a bit, you get another job here in Port Harcourt. You get another job here in that's how young people are. That's so true. They are quick to relocate. So when they relocate, the stress of getting your PVC transferred is too stressful, and most times it doesn't work. These things need to be simplified. And which begs the question, do we still really need the kind of PVC that we need? That has to be in that kind of form where... So there's an advocacy going on. We're engaging INEC and we're telling INEC, because we have deployed the beavers, we do not necessarily need that costly card that you call PVC. This thing needs to be simplified in a way that young people can quickly print a PVC, just a paper. Because all the barcode is there, the PR code or something is there. All that you need, that the technology needs, is on that paper. You don't necessarily need to go through that stress of INEC spending money to print that. PVC should be something that Nigerians should be able to print in any business center. Yes. So when you misplace it, because like I said, young people are always traveling, they're always getting jobs. Okay, look at the flood that happened in Medigre, for instance. Yes. Most of the young people or women who are involved in, who were victims of that flood, they probably have lost their PVCs
That's
for the next
true.
election.
That
But
is true.
if so they have to go through INEC to request for INEC to make all of their expenses to print another one. PVCs should be printed. It should be paper that should be printed. So when you lose it, when you misplace it, when it gets lost, when you tear it, you just print another one. All of these things are the challenges that affect young people to participate in election. Then the violence we see in our election is another concern. Then a lot of young people typically have also given up. And I say this frankly, a lot of Nigerians have given up. They're no longer expecting anything out of this democracy and out of elections.
Yeah.
Given what we see, we're in a Edo State election, at the end of the day, see that the results, the data that INEC will give you before election to say this is the number of registered voters and this expectation, at the end of the election, what will be on the IREV will be different from the data that INEC gave you before then. And then the result that will be announced is different from what is on the IREV. And you know that IREV was brought into our elections to bring some sort of transparency and credibility.
Yes.
But the IREV lost its strength after the 2023 elections, when the Supreme Court said that it doesn't have legal backing and as such it cannot be brought to a court as evidence for you to be able to prove that you won an election. So at that point, IREV lost all its relevance. And for that reason, a lot of young people just don't trust the process. The biggest challenge beyond the work that has been done by INEC and other electoral stakeholders to ensure inclusion is trust. There is trust deficit. People don't believe in the process. People don't believe in the system. With all the engagement to do, people just don't believe in the system. The level of vote buying that we see, and you don't blame them. They will tell you that most times, at the end of the day, whether you sell your vote or you don't sell your vote, that who will win the election still wins the election. Whether they sell their vote or they don't sell their vote, they've been voting for years. There is no presence of government in most of these local governments across Nigeria. They work within communities, they go to communities, you will see no primary. The primary care centers there are dilapidated. Their primary schools are literally not existing. They drink water from the stream and river where their animals drink water from. These people don't have nothing to show that there is government. Insecurity is ravaging them. People in that situation, election for them is just a business day, a cash out day where they come. Because whether they take or they don't take, they've not seen difference. They've not seen dividends of democracy. They are no longer expecting it. Because in the past 25 years, they've been voting. And yet, there's no development in their places. So they just come out because they've lost hope. They are not expecting anything anymore from government. So they just come out on election day, get what they can from the politicians, and go back to their life. Because really, they don't believe in government. They don't trust in the government anymore.
That is so true and so deep and so insightful. And we were talking about how INEC doesn't need to print the card like we know it. I'm even thinking about
card.
How it's even part of what is causing is against what we're talking about when we speak about climate change.
Yeah,
when we talk about climate action, that is impacting us.
And all of that stress of PVCs. So, during the 2023 election, you remember they say they saw PVCs in a gutter, in the sewage, inside the farm. Hunters saw some PVCs. That's because of how cumbersome the volume is. The stress people need to go through to get the. Do you know how many people that couldn't get their PVCs? The PVC should be available. If yours gets defaced, you get to the office, you print it from anywhere. Because really, why I'm saying this, before the introduction of beavers, what they needed for you in the election that time was your PVC. But right now with beavers, it is your face and your fingerprint that is needed. And if your fingerprint doesn't authenticate or your face doesn't authenticate, there is a barcode which is on that rubber card, which it can be on a paper.
Yes, can be on a paper.
But before, there was a chip in that PVC that usually takes a handshake with the card reader that we used to use before.
Yes, I get
but we don't use the card reader no more.
Yes.
So why are we keeping the rubber cards? That is so stressful. So the advocacy is that we need to take out these rubber card PVCs and have people be able to print their PVCs. That way, with the beavers, which checks accreditation fraud, we will have more people participating in our elections. So it's not like, the PVC, see politicians will go to communities, they'll collect people's PVCs before election and tell them fill in your names and we'll give you this amount of money. So they stay in control. You don't have to stay in that, you don't give them that control. If it's a paper, there's no reason, one is costly. unnecessarily costly. The logistics of distributing it is so much, it's so enormous, and we are all paying for it because from our
tax.
commonwealth, from our tax.
Yes.
So this thing needs to be decentralized. That way, civil societies can also mobilize and go to rural communities just with a printer. Just a little money, you will print PVCs for the whole communities and make it available for them. People every day are being sacked from their communities because of insecurity, Boko Haram, agitation, separatists in Southeast and all of that. For every time such happens, people lose their PVCs. Because, I mean, they tell you that nobody pursues a rat when the house is on fire. So there won't be insecurity and you're looking for a PVC to run.
You won't even think of
you
it
will
at
take
that
off.
point.
You go take off.
When you have children to save, when
Yes.
your devices are there,
So we need to further simplify this process. It's too stressful. I have a lot of young people who work in my office. At a time, we have to give them, during the voter registration, we have to give them 2 days off. Say, you go and register. But how many offices, how many private businesses will give their staff off to go and register for? So this thing needs to be simplified. That way, young people will participate more. But sometimes I wonder if it's intentional that they are making the process this difficult, just so that a lot of young people will not be able to vote. Because truly, when the time comes where young people will be able to participate in voting seamlessly, then young people will start deciding automatically who wins an election in Nigeria. Maybe the political actors and political elites don't want that yet, which is why they're late. Because there's no reason.
Why
would you be using a costly process when there is a cheap, seamless process? Who does that?
Yes, I agree with you. It seems like it's
intentional.
It's intentional, right?
Yeah,
it
it's
seems
intentional.
Like it's intentional.
But that's the advocacy going on. We hope that before 2027 we'll be able to get that out of the way.
We really hope so. Really hope so. And you spoke about how INEC does some research in different communities to know what persons with disability need. But we observed in the Edo State elections that there was no proper inclusion for persons with disability. It seemed like some materials were provided at polling units where those needs weren't there. You provide magnifying lenses in a place where there's nobody with albinism that needs such a thing. You provide braille paper in a place where there's no blind person that needs such a thing. Many polling units couldn't have people who use wheelchairs, didn't have access to where they could vote. So why is that? Why do we
the part you talked about wheelchair is, I'll take it from there first of all. One of the challenges, elections usually is around logistics. 95% of activities of election is logistics, deployment, moving from point A to point, then training and capacity building. So you see, most times INEC will tell you that they've already cited their polling needs to be in places where that will be accessible for people on wheelchairs. But on election day, some of the coppers who are assigned to these places, when they go to those places, they look for a convenient place for them, probably where they feel there is a shade. So I've been to election in last year's election is it Ondo? No, Ondo is still upcoming. Ekiti and Osun election. Yeah, there was a particular polling unit where you have to jump a gutter for you to get to jump a gutter and climb a staircase for you to get. So you see, you see all of that. You have to first jump the gutter. Then you need to climb a stair flight of about 4 staircases before you can get to the. So all of these things happen. But then again, we cannot completely say, I'm not holding brief for INEC. I don't think we can say that there are magnified glasses here, but no albino came. The question is, how many people came out to vote in the election? So if there are 2 or 3 albinos in that particular polling unit, they probably didn't turn up. If there's someone who is visually impaired in that community, they probably didn't even turn up. Because most times, the violence, the convention of violence before that election was so much. But somehow, there wasn't really violence in the election. But the convention around how violent and all the pre-election violence happened. Clearly, someone who has a clear vision, a lot of them still didn't turn up because of that. Talk more of people who are actually, living with disabilities. Clearly, they most likely will stay clear of the election, because when things go wrong, they are most vulnerable to save themselves. So we cannot empirically say that there were magnifiers, but we didn't see visually impaired, or there were brailles, but we didn't see, because what was the voter turnout in that election? I think it was about 22% or so. So the remaining 78% who didn't turn out, probably those are the people that those things were meant for. But however, INEC must continue to make these provisions. Let it now be that, and it's costly. These things are costing Nigeria money, sadly. We'll just have to engage more. We just have to, and as we go forward, I think one of the key things we need to do in our elections, one is to legalize the IREV.
Very important.
That is very, very important. If we don't do that, we may not make any progress.
Yes.
The same the Kogi State pattern of election, what happened in Kogi State, where just 5 local governments at the end of the election, they just announced results that had 97% voter turnout.
97%. How possible can
which
that
has
be?
never happened before in Nigeria, just to use it to knock out votes. So that pattern is what they're using. But if we deploy IREF for what it is, matched with biometric voter accreditation, and then you transmit, and the polling units, presiding officers must transmit. It has to be legal. The bigger problem in Nigeria is we've lost values. And why that happens is because what I call lack of consequence management structures in the country. A situation where people get away with anything. So people just do anything and you get away with it. The law doesn't come after you. And this thing comes from the biggest people in government down to the citizens who drive in the city centers that beat the traffic and everything. That lack of consequence management is what is making Nigeria almost a lawless country. People have this attitude of anyhowness because you can get away with anything. Because really, if there are laws, and there are laws in the Electoral Act 2022 that states that if a presiding officer doesn't transmit from the polling unit, there are sanctions or fine or jail time. But I don't know of any presiding officer out of the what about 100 and how many polling units do you have again? What about 187? After they did that, 186,000 polling units that were active after they cut down those ones that didn't have people that were registered there. Out of the 186,000 presiding officers, who many of them didn't transmit? How many people went to jail? So we need to get to a point where we need to ensure that these laws work. That way people will start being responsible. Knowing, the only difference between the Western country that we call civilized and here in Nigeria, which is a developing or less developing country, is law enforcement. And that's the only difference. Because, in those Western countries, there are people who are evil, people who are crazy, and people who are rich. But just because they know that the law will catch up with them, people tend to be more responsible. But in Nigeria, everything just goes, people do anyhow. And we need to change the orientation of our people, value reorientation. And frankly, civil societies cannot do much. Can't do that. Because it needs to cut across the whole country. So we need to get the commitment of government. Because it's only government that has such structure to engage. Is government, National Orientation Agency, they have offices in all the local governments across Nigeria. The NTA, as a television channel, you don't need DSTV. DSTV is elitist. You don't need to pay for cable. It's even costly now for you to watch NTA. Just with your basic antenna, or even without an antenna, you can get NTA. They are across the country. Those are government institutions that must be used to start changing the orientation of our people, that value orientation. So they'll start understanding first what are the government policies? Why are they not working? What is our role as citizens? But this has to be intentional. And the president really needs to commit to that. And that's the first step for us to even have better elections going forward. But sadly, the president hasn't said anything about electoral reforms in this past 1 year and 5 months that he has been in office. We are hoping that he commits to electoral reforms. That way, civil societies can now come as support from the flank. Civil societies, faith-based organization, youth-based organization, all of them can now come from the flanks to support what government is doing. That way, then there may be a chance.
That's absolutely correct. And still staying on this conversation around inclusivity, I like how you brought about the conversation on electoral reforms and the Electoral Act of 2022. So how can this kind of electoral reforms, how can they improve on the elections, the process of election, fairness, when we talk about fairness, accessibility, integrity, how can electoral reforms ensure this?
So electoral reform is it's quite a big document and is a continuous process because our elections and democracy is a continuous process. So after every election, of course, we always see the gaps. Because when I say I worked closely with other stakeholders to have that Electoral Act 2022. And when we put it together, we were like, whoa, this is really good. We're so proud of what we've done. And then also looked at INEC guidelines that they created for that election. And we were like, this election is going to be good. We're going across beyond Nigeria saying this election, this is the best we're going to have. Literally, I got a lot of people to vote from my engagements. But after that election, the calls I got, people that were calling me to say very terrible things to me, that you guys failed. So my point is, after every election, you will always see the gaps. And you now do focused reforms based on those gaps. One key gap that we've seen in this last election, like I said, is one, the IREV is the chief of the whole process. We need to legalize. We thought it was legalized, but the Supreme Court interpreted it to say that it didn't have legal backing. So one key thing that needs to do is to legalize the IREV. And a lot of people that participated, if people came back from outside Nigeria to vote in the election, it was because of the promise of IREV, the transparency of IREV. All the stakeholders that came, foreign observers that came from Commonwealth, European Union, Chatham House, when we were engaging them, their excitement and expression was on IREV. Everybody was looking up to that IREV, and that's why there was that level of participation. When IREV didn't work, when IREV failed, many people just gave up on election. So the IREV is chief on what we need to do on our electoral reforms. A lot of other places have been identified, like the timing of how court process should end before you swear people in, because it doesn't make sense that if someone in, the person is not controlling all the arms and person is controlling government and controlling even the judiciary, and you expect the person. So we're saying that these things, all the election legal tussles must end before someone is sworn in. Then the party primaries. So, there are different areas, and that's what is ongoing. It's a process. And we hope that before 2026, not just finishing it, but we are trusting that the president will commit to you. Because no matter what you do, and you've seen this National Assembly that we have, this National Assembly is just an arm of the president's office, sadly, both the Senate president and the Speaker of the House of Reps. So anything we do, we hope that the president will commit and sign and assent to the Electoral Act. So it will be like what we had with President Buhari in 2019, where severally 4 times or so he refused to assent to the Electoral Act. That also made us have the kind of terrible election we had in 2019. So while it is stressful, it's tiring, that every election cycle will come back, will say the same things. Like a day election was, it's so disappointing that we'll come back. We'll talk about National Youth Road Transport Workers. They came late. They couldn't find the polling unit. The coppers didn't sleep in the same conversations every year.
Yes.
Why are we not getting it right? Our next mandate is do this one job. Why is it so difficult for them to get their logistics right? Because once you miss it at the point of logistics, election starts late, starts by 12, the election credibility is already literally lost at that point in time.
People are destabilized.
People are already destabilized already.
There's no room for inclusivity.
Inclusivity wouldn't even happen at that. There's confusion everywhere. The confusion so we're set out to observe the US election in on 5th of November in US. Now we're supposed to arrive US on the 2nd. So we got accreditation from the state of Maryland to come and observe this election. So when we reached out to the Secretary of State of Maryland to say, we are arriving, because we're supposed to have some engagements. We're arriving on the 2nd. He said, oh, sorry, 2nd is on a Saturday. Sunday, that they won't be in the office on Saturday, Sunday. That has to be Monday. We're like, Monday is just a day to the election. They say, nah, come on, there's no pressure here. Because everything that needs to be put in place is in place. So that we will not be available. It's a weekend, we won't come to work. We will meet you on Monday. The point I'm making is, in Nigeria here, the profession looks like looks like war. But this is a country telling you that we'll be at home with our families on Saturday, Sunday, because everything, the same logistics, everything has been taken care of. You have to meet us on Monday, which is on the 4th, a day before the election. That's how elections should be. But here, with all the tension, all the planning, all the Nigerian Navy flying the ballot papers, everybody, yet the logistics still becomes a mess at the end of the day. So it's very, for me particularly, I must tell you, it's very disturbing for me that every election cycle since 2015, we'll come back and we're saying the same thing, complain about the same issues, literally the same issues. And so it just makes you feel like we're not making progress. It's just, and that's why the voter turnout is dropping.
Keep
And that's why the
dropping.
numbers are dropping. What we used to have before wasn't real, like I said, because there was no. But
Nothing to
sadly,
check.
that's the data available. And if you are doing a research, that's the data
That's
you
what
still
you
use
use.
because that's what is available. But looking at critically close is that there was a lot of accreditation fraud.
Yes, so many loopholes.
But then so you ask yourself, when I say we'll take a step forward and we'll still go backward, there's still beavers. But yet we saw in 5 local governments in Kogi State having 97-98% voter turnout. And it wasn't questioned. And even though INEC had 1 week to also review results, nothing was said about it. That result stands to the extent that it has gone to the point of Supreme Court where the result stood. So you see, it just it makes you almost think of just but who won't. We're here. We'll soldier it on and we'll keep hoping that if we don't get it right for our generation, we'll get it right for our children.
For the next, yes, absolutely.
For the next generation,
Absolutely,
yes.
we're here. So I like as you brought in the conversation of observing the elections in more advanced countries and even the US election that is coming up. And you've had a wide experience, observing elections in other countries as well. What will you say are some global case practices, some good practices that have been implemented for more democratic inclusions in these other countries that you've observed the elections?
So the most important thing in election is the integrity of the votes. Is the votes not allowing manipulation in the election. And why a lot of people are quick to say, electronic voting, technology, I'm not a fan of that. Because I've seen election in Europe, I've seen election in US, I observed the 2016 President Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton election in 2016. These countries are not still doing election with that level of technology.
Really?
Yes, they still do traditional voting. You come out and vote. But one thing they do, so you deploy technology without necessarily saying, hey, do electronic vote from your phone. But they deploy technology. So how they do election like in Colorado and USA is at the point of registration, first of all, the process is simplified. You don't have to open a window of 6 months, come and do voter registration. Everybody's queuing up. It's madness. It doesn't have to be like that. You can register at any time to vote. That's what we need to start doing. What we do that, we wait for general election. INEC says from June till November, there's going to be voter registration. In this point, they start deploying coppers and putting people. It's so stressful. It doesn't need to be like that.
Yes.
INEC, they have offices across all the local governments, all the area local governments across Nigeria. INEC needs to be doing voter registration every day. People are turning 18. People are turning 18 today.
Yes.
People who have never voted can just wake up and just listen to one motivational speech and just feel like they should go and register. People don't need to wait for a particular time. And it doesn't have to be in INEC offices. There are places where people always go to. People go to hospitals for Medicare and different things. People go to primary healthcare centers.
Yeah.
Those places should be places positioned at all times for people to register to vote. People go to do vehicle registration and VIO. People go for their driver's license. People go for international passports immigration. All those points should be available all times.
Yes.
In some market areas, and if you go to traditional in rural communities, some places they don't have market days every day. They have market days on a Nibola, and they have a it's a particular day. INEC should make themselves available to be registering people to vote within that stretch of, so there is no tension of election is coming. That tension shouldn't be there. So that's one thing they do. Then critical to what they do in the election is at the point where you are registering to vote, there's no PVC. What we do with PVC is very, very atavistic. At the point of your registration, you sign. When you're just like when you do your international passport, your signature is in the system.
Yes.
So when they print your international passport, your signature is already there. You just sign. Then on the election day, you come, they give you a ballot. You sign. You choose who you want to vote and sign. The signature you sign there is what confirms your vote. And that's where technology now comes in. Every ballot paper in the county centers, in the local government vote collection centers, there's a machine. So every paper is placed to pass through a machine because the machine has been fed with your signature, which you signed when you register to vote. So when your ballot passes through the machine, and it's really fast. Once the signature is right, your vote is counted. Your vote is counted. Your vote is counted. That's why they can do early voting. In some states, they've already been voting, where they mail you your ballot paper. And it doesn't matter. I mean, here, we'll do ballot paper as if is one ojuju. They send you your ballot paper. If you make any mistake, you take it, they send you another one. Because once your vote is counted, the 2 votes, you can't have more than 1 vote. And when you fail, what they need is just your signature. But if you decide to be funny and you want to vote for your children or for your family members, you don't know their signature. Once it comes in, it won't be taken in. So that's the place of technology and logistics and planning. So all of this issue of give us 6 months to come and register to vote, and they could now start printing the PVCs within that period, and now start thinking of how to distribute the PVCs. Meanwhile, election is coming, and elections are timed. You must stop distributing PVCs from so and so time. So all of those things puts too much tension on our elections. So these are some of the things we've seen in other countries, especially the Western countries, that we should start doing here. The last time, the CVR INEC is doing now, it was our engagement with INEC. After our US election observation, that made INEC even shift grounds. INEC before, what they do is when election is approaching, they will open on just 3 weeks or 1 month for voter registration. And they call it CVR. We had meeting with the chairman. We say CVR means continuous voter registration.
Yes.
It means it should be continuous. During 3 weeks, it shouldn't have that C in that CVR because it's not continuous. This thing needs to happen every day.
Over and over
so
again.
People will do it with ease. People can do their transfers with ease. Transfer of voting. You don't have to wait for when election is almost there. If you get relocated to Lagos, you should right now go online and fill in for a transfer. In a week or 2 weeks, why would they wait for the election time for all of this to happen? So those are all the things that put pressure on election, and these are the reasons that our logistics are usually whack, because the tension that comes with it in trying to do all of those logistics and deployment within that short space of time, with all the issues that follow it, then it messes up our elections. I just hope that we're losing it up a bit and then use technology to check it. But I'm not for electronic voting. I'm not for saying people should vote over the phone. That's the easiest way to also
manipulate the elections.
Manipulate the elections, yeah. So
yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, we've had such great conversations, Mr. Emmanuel, but I'd like to ask you this question. So we're talking about inclusivity, and we're looking at how young people, how both genders, and how persons with disability can, be more included in the elections across the country and of course across Africa as well. But how can young people lead and advocate for this inclusivity we're talking about? How can they advocate to be included in elections and democratic related processes?
So the thing is that, do young people believe in the elections for them to lead in the advocacy? Is the civil society sector that we're privileged to have knowledge of what is at stake and the need for elections. But like I said earlier, typical young person who is unemployed, who can barely feed, who cannot access a primary health care center. And when I look at the country and the challenges that we face in this nation right now, with the energy crisis around fuel, transportation, food inflation, and all of these challenges, it wouldn't have been so bad if government before now was providing primary health care centers where people can have subsidized Medicare, without spending from their pockets.
Yes.
That would have reduced their pressure. It would not have been so bad if citizens had functional primary and secondary school system where people don't need to pay private schools for education. It wouldn't have been so bad if government had proper transport system where people don't have to get kidnapped or don't have to enter one chance or don't have to pay so much to move around. So the point I'm saying is the government has so behaved badly that the young people who you are talking about are all defeated. They're defeated. They're literally struggling. And sometimes we use the city center, as a measure. But that's a very wrong yardstick.
Yes, it is.
You don't use that.
Very
if you
false.
go beyond Abuja, young people in this country are hopeless. This is a country where people are praying and fasting just to get out of their country, to leave, to Jabba. That's the trend. So the young people you are talking about leading elections, you ask yourself, the young people who work in the hospitals as medical personnel, doctors and nurses, are they leading even in that sector? Every person, most people working in hospitals, every day their dream is to get out of the country. So people are so distracted because they are so defeated that all they desire is not electoral reforms. All they desire is not even a government working. All they desire is to get out.
To leave.
No matter how they live.
Yeah.
Whether they live through the desert, Libya, and risk dying, They just want to get out. Every day we'll see some of these social videos coming from different countries of Nigerians in prisons and people languishing and all of this. So, like I said, government needs to lead. And then civil societies will flank. And then we can now get young people to participate in these conversations. The people don't trust in the system. The people don't believe in the system. If you have to travel in southern Nigeria now from Benin to Asaba, this is a journey typically that should take you 40 minutes. This journey takes about 4 hours. It's hellish to travel. So people are going through a lot. And frankly, all they desire is to eat. Because food is costly, you are aware.
Yes,
When I was small, when I was young, beans, we used to see beans as people that are suffering kind of food. But beans is luxury food. It's not even available for the poor people anymore.
Yes, right now.
Rice is so not available for. So people are just literally struggling to feed. We should continue to call on governments. Because INEC cannot do it. What can INEC do in their engagements? They can't do much. So what we continue to call on government to create, strategies that they will use to engage young people. So everybody will fall in line to be able to get people to participate. Frankly, enough is not being done. After the loss or the missed opportunity of IREV in 2023, I'm sure you saw some people burning their PVCs, some people tearing their international passport.
Yes.
That was how much people were disappointed. And that's how much people were hurt. A lot of people believed and trusted in the process for once. But we'll miss that opportunity. They won't just get back into the system.
Yes.
There needs to be a lot of engagement, reassuring. And you don't just reassure on empty promises. It needs to be actionable. You need to see the workings. Oh, there is an electoral reform. Oh, these are the points in this electoral reform. Oh, the president has committed to assent to electoral reforms. That way people will key in. But like I said, the political elites, do they want that?
They don't.
Would that favor them?
Hard.
Will that serve them? Because as it is right now, the country is the citizens are in a terrible, terrible shape. I said this because my wife is a civil servant and she's probably level 12 in civil service. If she was the head of the family or the breadwinner of the family, with the number of kids I have, her income will not be able to take care of us for more than 3 days or 4 days. Yes.
Wow.
It won't. And when I say 3 days, I'm doing overall of all you need.
Yes,
from your rent to your medicals, to the clothing, to school fees, to every other thing that you need. To transportation, which is key, critical. To food. Her income, if she was the head of the family, can't take care of us. For 4 days, it can't go a week. There's no chance it will go a week. And yes, she works in a federal institution and she's a health professional. How about people who are earning way less? And yet the average income in Nigeria still is about 50,000 naira. That's the average income of most people in Nigeria. 50,000 naira.
It's unbelievable. How?
So, but they say minimum wage, which hasn't really kicked in. For now, the average income is 50,000 naira. In fact, in Abuja, the average income in Abuja is less than 50,000 naira because where the bulk of employment is all this market in the plazas, all the sales girls, all those who that work in those places, they don't pay them about 50,000 naira. They pay them range of 30,000 naira thereabouts. So how do they get by?
How do they get by? That's a question for you to go back with. How do people get by? Mr. Emmanuel, thank you so much for your time and for all the beautiful insights you've shared. I don't know, do you have any final words you'd like to share with our audience? People who are looking at the democracy that we are practicing now. For
me, I will always say that democracy is still the best system of government. I've seen people advocating, the military should come and take over. It is worse if the military takes over. We should continue to believe in this system. We should not give up because giving up means that you've been defeated. Giving up means that it will only get worse. In fact, people should prepare to vote in 2027. People should vote in a way that they should be able to express themselves through a vote. I tell my wife that when you complain and you get angry, you talk about everything, express it through a vote. We can hit the street and do a protest. And when we hit the street to do protest, our intent is not to burn down anything, any government infrastructure. The intention is not to remove any president, because the only way to remove a president, a democratically elected president, is through an election or the National Assembly impeaches him. Not through a protest on the street. That will bring more chaos. But the most important is prepare yourself to vote. If you feel good about the government, express it through a vote. If you feel bad about this government, express it through a vote. Because that's what democracy offers. And I hope that Nigeria gets better. I really pray. But I believe that Nigeria will get better. I believe. People tell me, won't you jackpot? Won't you? I say, no. Are you planning to jackpot?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not planning to jackpot.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Njoku. Thank you so much for your time. We believe that Nigeria will get better. We believe in the power of your votes. We strongly believe in that. Thank you so much for being with us, our very distinguished guest. I know we derailed from the conversation of inclusivity, but we can't talk about inclusivity without talking about the systems that should include people, So thank you so much. And I'm sure you've gotten so much insight from our conversations today. It's still Youthacy on Ready to Talk TV and podcast. And my name remains Ifunanya Nduka. Please ensure to share this video, like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and absolutely leave a comment. Thank you so much and have a good day.